just wanted to say a little bit about the recent result of a certain election, which I am just so relieved that it's all over because I'm just sick of hearing about it. But anyway, I didn't particularly care either way because I do think, most leaders are usually controlled quite a lot anyway and puppets to some degree. However, there is probably a little bit of difference that's now going to happen. So some people are all like happy, some people are quite angry. And in my family, I have a lot of family members who will just go on and on about it and say how, he's now going to be a dictator and how terrible that is. And I just wanted to talk a little bit really about the difference. What is the difference between a dictator and a leader, a strong leader? Because, why do we have leaders? I mean, if they haven't got any power, if they're not going to be in charge, then actually, what is the point, So what is the actual difference? This word dictator gets thrown around quite a lot, really. And if they have been voted in, which I absolutely believe he has been voted in, and possibly even the last time before was voted in, but they managed to kind of fiddle it. So, yeah, then how can he still be a dictator? Now, I looked it up, and a few things that came up was a dictator wants to control, whereas a leader wants growth. Okay. From the little bits that I've seen of him speaking, I would say he definitely does want growth for the country. So I don't think, he really ticks that box of control so much. Apart from the fact that, being a leader kind of does give you certain amount of control, supposedly, you know. Next one is dictators want to be served, whereas a true leader wants to serve the people. Okay, well, I mean, if that's the case, then we actually do have quite a lot of dictators around the world. And I'd say, our recent leader, Keir Starmer, maybe fits into that then, because there's this whole farmer thing going on at the moment, and he will not budge on it, Well, it's pretty obvious that the people, are behind the farmers. Most people, I think, that I know, and the more I speak to people, there's growing kind of support for the farmers. So therefore, if he doesn't take that into account and will not budge on it, then how is that serving the people? Really, doesn't that make him then fall into that dictator category? I would say so. And then look at like countries like Canada, and a lot of people call it communist Canada now, because Justin Trudeau is so much, so far down that kind of side of things, where he just doesn't seem to really listen to the people, and has proven time and time again that he, will go to great lengths to keep control when there were protests going on there. So yeah, maybe we have got more and more dictators actually around the world than ever before, but not necessarily the one that's recently come into America. Another one is dictators are prideful, whereas leaders are humble. Now, you can say many things about Mr. Trump, but humble is probably not one that I would say he quite fits. So yeah, okay, he's definitely, I think, has quite a big ego, but then that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a dictator. I think quite a lot of people who are drawn to, that kind of attention are gonna have quite a big ego. So yeah, it would be nice to have someone who doesn't have a big ego, like Jeremy Corbyn. That would have been lovely to see, and I think he really would have served the people, but unfortunately that was totally blocked. Another one is dictators have a personal agenda, whereas leaders have a world vision. Now, I thought this was quite an interesting one, because I thought, well, what if their world vision is to take over the world? Doesn't that kind of make them then a dictator? Because, I mean, if you look back in history, there's been so many leaders where their aim is to take over the world. yeah, like the British Empire, there's been many empires. So whoever's been in charge of those empires, surely that is the goal, is to, to have more power and control in the world. So does that make them a dictator or does that make them a good leader because they're trying to get more power for the country and make it grow? I mean, that's it, because there's some contradictions there, really, because it says near the beginning leaders want growth, whereas dictators want control. But actually, if leaders want growth, then doesn't that mean growing the empire? So I'd say there's a bit of a contradiction there. Um, so it seems to me that this word dictator is very much bounced around and used in a negative way, but it's hard to pinpoint, really, I think, the difference between a leader and a dictator. Because by definition, I think they are very similar things, aren't they? It's just whether, I think the main thing is whether people actually, whether they're popular or not. And maybe there's been some dictators that have been very popular, whether they're voted in or not. So, they might be popular for a certain amount of time and then suddenly become very unpopular because they go a bit too far. So, I think this is why absolute power corrupts absolutely, doesn't it? Because maybe someone might start off actually being a good leader that is serving the people and actually really has the best intentions, but over time that power can go to their head and therefore they can become more of a dictator. So yeah, I just thought it was a interesting topic and maybe worth pointing out, but only time will tell, I think, and we'll see where it all takes us. But also, with the agenda thing, what if it's not their agenda? What if it's someone who's whispering in their ear or pulling the strings? What if it's actually, there is an agenda, but it's not really the person who's supposedly in charge who is, actually coming up with the agenda. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot in the world at the moment. So yeah, that's why there's so many leaders who are coming up with the same kind of laws, because they're not really coming up with them at all. They're being told to implement them. And actually a lot of these things aren't what the people want. So therefore they're not serving the people, are they? At all. They're serving some other kind of master who's in the shadows. So